Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World Today. We are in Goa and the focus is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's foreign ministers meeting here in Goa. While the focus was how the countries are trying to move forward, reform and modernize this forum and also add a few more initiatives that have been proposed by India. But when India and Pakistan are in the room, expect some sparring, expect a bit of tit for tat. Let's look at what happened within the SCO forum during the session, what was raised by India and what was Pakistan's response.
While the world was engaged in facing COVID and its consequences, the menace of terrorism continues unabated. Taking our eyes off this menace would be detrimental to our security interests. We firmly believe that there can be no justification for terrorism and it must be stopped in all its forms and manifestations, including cross-border terrorism. The channel of finances for terrorist activities must be seized and blocked without distinction.
Terrorism continues to threaten global security. Let us not get caught up in weaponizing terrorism for diplomatic points for it. When I speak on this topic, I do so not only as the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, whose people have suffered the most in terms of number of attacks and number of casualties. I also speak as the son of a mother who was assassinated at the hands of terrorists. I and my country are firmly committed to eradicating this menace.
India's message very clear: talks and terror cannot go together, and that reflected in the body language of the leader as well. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was seen receiving the foreign ministers of SCO member states, wherein warm welcome, smiles for others. With Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, it was not a very warm reception. Why? Because India's messaging on camera, not just to Pakistan or to India, but to the world, is that India is firm on its stand that talks and terror cannot go together. But what happened within the SCO forum and the room also carried on outside of the room. There were press conferences that were held, there were interviews that were conducted. Let's take a look at what happened in the interview and the press conference, how India responded to Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's allegations or claims.
एक obviously हम इस चीज़ को मज़ाहमत करते हैं और वक्त पे एक ऐसा जवाब देंगे कि हमको याद रहेगा, मगर इसका ये करना ही इनका पैचीनेस को दिखाता है. It is a show of their arrogance to the world. Okay, to hell with international law, to hell with United Nations Security Council resolutions, to hell with any bilateral agreement. India will hold their events in Kashmir. What they'll find is they will be unable to achieve 110% attendance because other people will not compromise on their morals.
देखिए, I said उनका कोई G20 से लेना देना नहीं है. I will also say उनका कोई श्रीनगर से भी लेना देना नहीं है. There is only one issue to discuss on Kashmir, which is when does Pakistan vacate its illegal occupation of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. That is the only issue up for discussion.
As friends at the Mumbai attack, you too would like to see the conclusion of the Mumbai trial. Yes. So perhaps you will take it up with the government in India that in order to conclude the Mumbai trial, India should consider sending the witnesses necessary in a court of law. We have a very similar legal system in India and Pakistan. Here in, sir, you can provide as many pieces of paper as you would like, but as your legal system works, so does mine. And in your legal system, along with those pieces of paper, you have to provide witnesses in order for a case to go forward. So until we have that sort of cooperation from the Indian side, this case cannot conclude.
You know, victims of terrorism do not sit together with perpetrators of terrorism to discuss terrorism. Victims of terrorism defend themselves, counter acts of terrorism, they call it out, they delegitimize it, and that is exactly what is happening. So to come here and preach these hypocritical words as though we are on the same boat. I mean, they are committing acts of terrorism. And, you know, I don't want to jump the gun on what happened today, but I think we're all feeling equally outraged. So, I think, I mean, let's be very, very clear on this. You know, on this matter, the terrorism matter, I mean, I would say Pakistan's credibility is depleting even faster than its forex reserves.
But the SCO forum is not just about India, Pakistan and the spat. That's just one of the aspects of any time there is a multilateral and there are these two countries in the room, expect them to spar. But there's more to the SCO and the proposals and the initiatives that have been put forth by India. One, India wants English to be added as an official language. Why so? Because since its inception, Russian and Mandarin were the two languages, given that Russia and China were the founding members of the SCO, and the other Central Asian countries could either understand, speak Russian, or for that matter, Chinese in certain quarters quite well. And that's the reason why, after the inclusion of India and Pakistan in 2017, India has been nudging and now pushing for the inclusion of English language. Apart from that, there are two other very important news items. One is that there are going to be 4 new dialogue partners within the SCO, as also 2 new full members of the SCO. Let's take a look at what Dr. Jaishankar had to say about this information that we just put out.
In fact, one of the issues is also language. That SCO language, because of its original composition, was Russian and Chinese. So today, a country like India, and I raised this issue specifically, that, you know, we also need to make English one of the working languages of the SCO.
Beyond the Shanghai Cooperation Organization foreign ministers meeting, there were a lot of bilaterals that took place on the sidelines. The one big bilateral for India was the India-China bilateral. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang for the second time, and a long meeting that focused on the border tensions between India and China, particularly in the eastern Ladakh sector. But will there be de-escalation ahead of Xi Jinping's likely visit in July for the SCO summit, or later in the year for the G20 summit? We'll see.
The world's largest military standoff has just entered its 4th year. The giant armies of India and China, which entered a confrontation in eastern Ladakh in May 2020, remain deployed in huge numbers, postured for war, but held frozen by the ongoing drive to defuse things diplomatically. Just weeks after their first meeting during the G20 meet in Delhi, the SCO foreign ministers met in Goa on a new stage. The nearly 30-minute meeting focused on resolving outstanding issues and ensuring peace and tranquility in border areas.
Ties with China are abnormal. It cannot be business as usual. That was the message of Dr. Jaishankar ahead of his second meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang.
The big focus was on de-escalation, in order to pave the way for Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to the SCO and G20 summits scheduled in July and September this year in India. The Indian side has made it clear that it cannot be business as usual after the Galwan incident and the continued Chinese presence in eastern Ladakh since May 2020. Dr. Jaishankar has said the state of India-China ties is abnormal and there are real problems in the bilateral ties which need to have an open and candid dialogue.
The bulk of our conversation, understandably, was about the current state of our relationship, which many of you have heard me describe as abnormal, and I think those were among the adjectives that I used in that meeting. We have, there are real problems in that relationship that need to be looked at, that need to be discussed very openly and candidly between us.
On April the 24th, the Indian and Chinese armies held their 18th round of talks in Ladakh, agreeing once again to pursue the disengagement effort. In 3 years, the two sides have managed to agree to pull back troops from a handful of friction points, including Galwan, Pangong So, and the Hot Springs area. But dangerously close deployments continue to simmer in Depsang and Demchok sectors. The army-level talks were followed last month by Chinese Defence Minister Li Shangfu's visit to Delhi to attend the SCO Defence Ministers meet on April the 27th. His Indian counterpart had described the situation with this plain speak.
पिछले G20 में भी यह संभव नहीं हो पाया था कि सब एक मंच पर एक साथ आ जाएं, पर भारत में तो सब आ रहे हैं पार्टिसिपेट।
सभी आ रहे हैं।
ये भारत की शक्ति का।
देखिए, इस सच्चाई को कोई नकार नहीं सकता कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जगत में भारत की प्रतिष्ठा मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में बढ़ी है।
The India-China de-escalation has been incremental and slow, reflecting China's continued impulse to change the border status quo, while India's unrelenting defense posture has locked the two Asian giants in an embrace. Will the two countries find a new path forward? With Geeta Mohan in Panjim, Goa, Bureau Report, India Today.
Well, that was a coverage on the SCO ministerial from Goa, but there's a lot more that happened during the week. Let's take a look at some of the news stories from across the world in World at a Glance.
US has completely denied any involvement in an alleged drone attack on the Kremlin after Russia accused Washington of guiding Ukraine to launch the assault. Russia alleged that Ukraine carried out a terrorist attack aiming to kill President Vladimir Putin in a drone attack. A 13-year-old boy opened fire in a classroom in Serbia's capital Belgrade. 8 students and a guard were killed in a meticulously planned attack. 6 other students were injured. Police named the shooter as Kosta Kekmanovic. The shooter used his father's gun for the shooting. A shooter opened fire inside the waiting room of an Atlanta medical facility, killing 1 woman and injuring 4 others. Atlanta police is on the hunt for the suspected shooter, who is believed to be 24-year-old Dion Patterson. The Canadian Tax Authority has reached a tentative deal with 35,000 striking employees, ending the 2-week work stoppage that marked one of the largest public sector labour disputes in the country's history. The death toll in the flooding of western Rwanda has gone up to 129. According to the office of President Paul Kagame, rescue operations are underway. 6 people were killed in neighbouring Uganda as well. Enrique Tarrio, the former leader of the Proud Boys, and 3 other subordinates were convicted of numerous felonies, including seditious conspiracy for their roles in the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. They were found guilty of conspiring to prevent the peaceful transfer of power from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. A Thai woman has been charged with 14 counts of murder in one of the kingdom's worst suspected serial killing case. Sararat Rangswithupon is alleged to have swindled thousands of dollars out of her victims before poisoning them with cyanide.
That's all in this edition of World Today from Goa, where we focused on the SCO ministerial. Lots more coming up on the other side of a short break. Stay tuned to India Today. Goodbye and take care.